good. Okay, good man. Good, you're good. Did everybody come in? How many people? What I'm curious about, because a lot of people are coming up to me at the show saying that they first found it through like Comixology and some of the other digital websites. Did anybody come across Irredeemable and Incorruptible other than in their local comic store?
Rock's Comic Blog or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is that actually?
So I use Google Reader.
Yeah.
And I was just looking for like comic book, a blog about comics.
Yeah.
So I started getting into it. This one comic blog was Rock's something or
Oh, that kind of like ROKK? Yeah.
And he reviewed the first few of Irredeemable. And that's what got me.
Excellent. Cool. Sea of covers on them that just say Mark Waid is evil, and I was just like, oh my god, like, my mother's not alive to see this. Oh god. So yeah, I'm evil. Yeah. I'm a badass. Yeah. So I really got, like I said, nothing terribly, I basically just here to improv and vamp on Irredeemable and Incorruptible. Do you have any questions about these books? Everybody following okay? Yes, you in the back. Yes, sir.
Does the plutonian scent smell like burning flesh?
When they asked about, because the VPAL guys were very interested in my input, and that's dangerous to ask me about things like perfume and stuff, because I still wear high karate. But again, another joke that no one at the age of 50 gets. Awesome. Polo, how about that? I remember polo. I love Ralph Lauren. But they said, well, let's talk about the characters and stuff. And they, and I think I said, like, he reminds me of, like, evil plutonian reminds me of, dust and dark and, and soot and burning stuff. And so, yes, the scent for evil plutonian. I mean, it's repulsive. You wouldn't, you are not going to find the woman of your dreams when you're wearing this scent, or maybe you are. I don't know, but it's pretty awesome. I mean, the sense, the way they do things is, they were meant to be worn, but they're also, a lot of them sort of meant as collectibles, which is nice, that remind you of the characters, whether or not you actually wear them or not. The thing started as I think that, with the exception of Volt, which was unintentional, there weren't any, other than Plutonian, there weren't any real specific, like, oh, this is Hawkman, or oh, this is Black Canary. It wasn't, none of them were intended to be like that. But that's all because as we got into the book, when I first started the series, I honestly thought that the book would be a lot more about the Plutonian and a lot less about the other characters. And so, to be honest, it really wasn't that concerned. And basically, a lot of the character designs were, hey, Pete, we need like 5 guys in the background. Here's some character names, and run with it, and Pete Krause then designed those characters. And only as I started building the world and sort of got into the story that I realized that, Caden in particular was interesting to me. Hubert in particular was very interesting to me, because I always like writing the super genius characters. And then they all sort of, it's true of all writers will tell you, as you spend enough time with these characters, they start to build on lives of their own, and they start to suggest new stories and new things for themselves. The guy who kind of slipped the crack was Volt, who even I really just paid no attention. I realized, oh, another black guy with electrical powers. Awesome. That's what comic needs. Yeah. So that was so very. Really, sort of early on, I made a conscious decision to try to take those characters as quickly, as far away from any sort of analogs as they could possibly be perceived as, at least the rest of the paradigm. Just because I think, I think it's really easy to keep writing stories over and over and over again about a thinly veiled Avengers or a thinly veiled Justice League or something. That doesn't interest me as much. It's a good starting point for what we had, just because Plutonian going bad, and clearly the analog there is a Superman-like character, but that was to sell the readers on the idea and quickly get across what the idea was. But once you get away from that, he's not much like Superman at all, really, as you start to get away from this first couple of issues. So it's, I would say that's kind of where we are. About why one of the twins died and not the other one. Okay, good. So I can tell the story without being repeating it. Thank you for being patient listening to it for the 14th time. Here's a good example of the spontaneity of the thing. So I put twins in the book early, Charybdis and Scylla, and twin brothers. And I don't know why. I think I just always liked the idea of twin superheroes. There's something about it that was interesting to me. But as we started issue 3, I realized that the way the plot sort of went, I needed one of them, spoiler alert, to die. And this is an example of just not, of being spontaneous. I needed one of them to die, and it didn't matter which, because neither of them really had a personality yet. They hadn't really spent much screen time on page, but one of them was named Charybdis, and I was getting tired of typing both names. I mean, Charybdis is a mouthful, and Scylla is not much easier to spell. So I'm like, okay, well, Charybdis, I can keep calling him Carrot. That makes sense. That's a good nickname for getting Charybdis. Scylla, ooh, there's no good nickname for the name. So you're dead. You're the one who goes. And that poor guy, that poor character's like, but it's not my fault. It's just, you're the one who named me. I'm sorry, you go. So that's the kind of, that's also, I mean, the advantage of doing something that is your own, like this, as opposed to working for Spider-Man or Batman or something like that. The advantage is you get to make all this stuff up and nobody's standing over your shoulder and it's your world to create. That is not necessarily an easier job, it's just a different job. Because I get asked that a lot. You notice I'm just going to make up my own questions and answers while I'm up here. So often I'm asked, which is easier, Mark, writing Irredeemable or writing Spider-Man? And it's different because with Irredeemable I get the freedom, all the freedom in the world, but at the same time I have to make everything up, and there's no history to draw from. There's no, there's no old villains, there's no old set pieces, there's no old stories to sort of mine details from, so you got to make that stuff up as you go. And sometimes it gets a little scary because you're making all these decisions on the fly, and the decisions you make on these characters, they will stick. Nobody's going to come along next month, and no writer's going to come along next month and undo what I did. So you have to be very conscious of those decisions, and sometimes it's a little daunting and scary to make those decisions.
So which one keeps you up later at night scratching your head, Spider-Man or Irredeemable?
Oh, Irredeemable by far. Because I know, like, Spider-Man's like, it's harder to plot, in a sense, because you're working within that construct of stuff that already exists. But again, the pieces are there. I don't have to worry about defining Peter Parker's voice. I don't have to worry about introducing a new love interest. It's all there. Whereas Irredeemable is just scarier to plot because, like I said, it's, once I put it down on paper, it's there. Yes, sir.
Well, following on what you're saying, you're basically creating a mythology.
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible at this point, in doing work for DC or Marvel, to do that? I mean, you're creating mythology, and Invincible,
Right.
He's creating mythology. It's what Stan was doing 30 years ago.
Right.
Is that possible anymore with the history that the two big companies
No,
have with the characters?
I don't think so. I don't think so. At companies with an ongoing superhero universe that already exists, I think it's really hard to get in there and create some sort of new mythology on it.
And they need the characters for ancillary products.
Yeah, I mean, there's two problems. One is that you get in there, and before you know it, you're part of some 40-part event, or your book needs that your character, in order to get the exposure that the character needs as a new character, suddenly has to be part of some 12-issue mega series that is adjustedly crossover or something, and that sort of makes it hard for you to create out of whole cloth. And also, the market, Irredeemable and Incorruptible aside, and I'm very stunned and surprised and pleased with the success of these books. I would never have predicted that we would have succeeded as well, because the market doesn't seem to respond that well these days to stuff that wasn't around when you were a kid. It seems to, especially in terms of superhero stuff, it tends to respond mostly to, another Green Lantern book, or, look, Barry Allen is back.
Unless there's a hook.
Unless there's a hook.
And the hook being, what is Superman snap?
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm
So-
going to use that phrase
Cool.
Yeah.
in my school.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because I always talk. I come from a retail background myself, and the things that always sold the best for me were things that I could pitch in one sentence. It was wide glass man. It was, all the guys on Earth are dead, and this one guy's here. And you find out why. Fables, all the story of fables that you grew up with. Now live in New York City.
Yeah.
Like those are things that you pitch in one sentence, and they treat customers, and it's an easy sell.
When I have customers walk in the door who say, well, who's Mary Jane?
yeah, it's a mess. Yeah.
You start to give answers like someone saying, well, who's Erica Kane?
Yeah.
Or not Erica, I'm trying to think of the one from...
Kate Kane, exactly, the new Batman. I'll get to you in a second, I promise.
Yeah.
No, but you're right. It's the nice thing about having a self-enclosed universe of two books and very defined characters is that, I'll never. So Devin Grayson, who was one of the writers of the Batman books and Nightwing and stuff through the '90s and stuff, she got into comics really late. She was a friend of mine. She got into comics really late, based on the animated show. She was already like 25 and she saw the animated show. She's like, that's really cool. And she went to her local comic book store and said, so what Batman graphic novel do I need to read? And as luck would have it, they gave her, I think, Dark Knight Returns. But they could have given her one of 100, crappy Batman graphic novels that are parts 4, 5, and 6 of something, and she never would come back. And I think that's probably the case in a lot of cases with new customers coming in, that you can't. There's not necessarily one Superman book or one Green Lantern book or one Flash book that you can give them and say, this is where you start.
And sometimes from the start, the first appearance of the character is only available in an essential or in showcase.
Yeah.
And black and white, it's not the same impact.
Yeah.
And the writing
A little corny in some places. So it's a little hard, but actually, you were very patient, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Superman as a touchstone emotion when I write this book, or when I use it in sort of reference, is really sort of looking back on what it's like to be that lonely. Because that to me is the real common thread. It's not the powers, it's not the look, it's not the little tiny tropes. It's the commonality between the two characters that I can draw from. Is my vision of Superman, for right or wrong, is of a man who is ultimately very, very, very lonely. He covers it quite well, and he's coped with it quite well, but he's the only person like him in the world. And this is why I've always been squidgy when I see Montauk can't still alive, or that he's married to Lois Lane or something. Because anything you do that takes away from that loneliness, I think, on a personal level, I think just doesn't do the character of Superman much service. So, that said, to kind of answer your question, if I pull anything from Superman, it's really that notion of what is it like to be that alone and to not cope with it like Superman has, to clearly have it affected you so badly that you're so powerful now, you're terrified of embracing another human being because you're afraid you'll kill them. What's it like to live in a world where you're afraid of even touching someone because you're afraid of the damage you might do? Can you imagine living in a world where literally you cannot touch or be touched? When somebody touches you, you can't feel it. And when you try to touch somebody else, you're terrified that you're gonna break them. And to live your life like that every day, that has got to take a massive toll on you. So thanks for bringing the room down. Now 10.
Yes.
So Alana, you've seen now. Alana Patel, who is Plutonia's ex-girlfriend, is now going to be an ongoing cast member in Incorruptible. That's the first of the sort of tie-ins. But then you'll see. I can't say anything without giving away the end of 19 of Irredeemable, but that sets the stage for a situation in year 2 of Incorruptible and year 3 of Irredeemable, where Max and Plutonian finally have to go, toe-to-toe with each other for the first time since everything's happened. And that would be a big blowout thing. So, yes, sir.
In issue 17, you had a dead female Plutonian. Are you going to explore that more or mention that again?
Oh, yeah. I did.
It was, she was kind of in the crisis.
Yeah.
That was me saying, I honestly think that was me saying to Pete, just draw some stuff. So, that's a question. Yeah, Pete threw that in. That's a question for Pete. I'll ask Pete. Yeah. Actually, let's see.